Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Many Faces of Cancer podcast. I am your host, Melissa Grausbull, and joining me today is Peter Coolbaugh. Now, Peter is a native of the Scranton, Pennsylvania area. He's lived in Baltimore since 2006 and is married to his wife, Renee, since 2013. He has no human children, but the father to a lot of cats. He has spent 20 plus years in the legal field and is looking currently for a career change. Now, in May of 2016, he was diagnosed first with stage 5 kidney failure, which led to the discovery of stage 3 multiple myeloma. Chemotherapy and dialysis went on for a year, and he had an autologous stem cell transplant in April of 2017. He was then able to get off dialysis a few months later and has been in stringent, complete remission since 2017. But he has faced other challenges with numerous infections and ailments and 2 forms of skin cancer. Peter is an avid baseball fan who enjoys traveling to ballparks and historic sites around the USA. So welcome to the show, Peter.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I am so glad to have you here. And we have got a lot to unpack from that bios. So, but first off, because I am a cat mom as well, tell us how many cats you have in your household.
Full disclosure, an even dozen.
An even dozen. Holy cow. Do they all get along?
Overall, yes, but they're cliques.
Okay. So cats are a lot like people. They have their favorites and they're
they choose their territory and partners.
Okay, that is awesome. Combination male, female?
Correct. I think eight male.
Okay. And 4 females?
Yes.
Wow. You have quite the full house. You have no need for human children.
No. And I don't have to worry about paying college either.
There you go. And you can go out and don't have to worry about getting a babysitter for the afternoon.
Correct.
Maybe they don't even notice that you're gone if you go out.
Usually no.
All right. The difference between cats and dogs. You got to love it. All right, Peter. So, wow, this is quite the story, your health journey. So why don't you take us back to 2016 and what was going on in your life? Like, what were kind of the health issues that made you kind of wake up and think, hey, something's wrong here?
Well, it started simple with lower back pain. And I don't sit on symptoms too long. So I went to a bone specialist, back specialist here in the Baltimore metro area. They did x-rays, all that kind of stuff. Couldn't find anything. Thought it might be muscular. So the standard painkiller and muscle relaxer approach. Felt better. Several weeks go by, pain returns, getting more and more severe. Instead of going to a regular doctor, my wife and I talked about it, and she's like, well, maybe you're a big guy. I was about 6'7" and a half at the time. And I started going to a chiropractor. So that helped alleviate some of the pain. Figured it might be just things out of whack, getting into the middle-aged sort of years of my life. So did that. Pain was still there. Around the same time, I started having stomach issues, let's say. Feeling more nauseated. Wasn't as hungry. Certain things that I enjoyed to eat or drink made me upset.
That was a red flag, I'm sure.
It was. And you kind of put it off the side. Oh, you'll get over it. It got worse and worse. So between the back pain and stomach issues and things I normally enjoy, coffee, barbecue, certain snacks were just, I didn't like, was turned off. So it came to a head one weekend when I was throwing up a lot. And I went to a ball game and just couldn't keep anything down. And that continued into a Monday morning. And I left my employer early in the morning. I was going to take myself originally to a urgent care facility. that was close by. And I saw that there was a line out the door. And I was like, okay, I don't want to wait here. Let me just go to the emergency room. The University of Maryland was just several more blocks headed west. So I went to the ER Monday, probably mid-morning, 9, 10 a.m. And the first realization that something was wrong was when they did the initial blood work. And my kidney function were very bad shape. My creatinine, my bun, or anything were off the charts, critical condition. And I was admitted to the hospital, pumped with fluids, all the kind of medicines, and the numbers wouldn't budge. So I was placed on hemodialysis within the first, I'd say, 36 hours I was there. They were worried about kidneys shutting down. I was in the final stage of kidney failure, and at 41 years old. And there's no
you had
history of
no
kidney
idea
disease.
before this.
Yeah, I guess this is where the nauseated feelings and stuff came from. My kidneys were shutting down. So while I was going through that, run this test, do that test, dialysis several days a week in the hospital. I had a kidney biopsy, I believe, in the first 4 or 5 days I was in there. Then the hematology came to see me in my room one afternoon and said it could be this, or this. I think there were 4 or 5 things possible that they suspected. That weekend, and most of them were cancer related. And of course, you're sitting there chewing your thumbs and you're very nervous and worried. What I also didn't notice is I had lost about 35 to 40 pounds over a couple months. And since just the two of us, didn't notice. I went from about 205, 210 in my normal range down to like the high 160s.
Wow,
So,
that's a lot at your height.
Yes. So I lost a lot of weight. So that weekend, I just kind of prepared for what may be coming. Monday morning, so I was in the hospital about a week. I had a bone marrow biopsy and I had a PET scan. And the results came back within 12 to 24 hours. The bone marrow biopsy was not fun. It's very painful because they did it while I was awake. But, yeah, not fun. Wouldn't recommend it. But it was confirmed the Tuesday that I had multiple myeloma, which is the rarest of the blood cancers. And
Can you share really quick what multiple myeloma is?
It's hard to explain. It's in the bone marrow and the blood. It is, I think, percentage-wise, maybe 3 in 100,000 in the United States and North America. Leukemia and lymphoma and their various forms are much more common, if you will.
Okay.
Multiple myeloma, like most cancers, doesn't have a cure. And it up until the early 2000s, once you got it, it was pretty much a death sentence. The founder of Walmart actually died from it in the early 90s. And thanks to his heirs and their generosity towards research, they've made significant strides. It's most common in folks 65 and above. Seems to have a higher percentage in certain minorities and also in women.
So you were checking off all those boxes.
Yeah. So I'm
being a 41-year-old white man.
Yeah, with no history of anything aside from high blood pressure. So I was, once it was told to me by a doctor who became my hemo-oncologist, that I was basically in the final stage of myeloma, and my condition was very advanced. And they were wheeling me that afternoon, so that was Tuesday, immediately into the inpatient cancer center. And I was starting chemotherapy that day.
Wow, that's very fast.
So I was in the hospital for several more days until I was released after, I think I was in for 10 or 12 days total, my initial stay. And then I had to do chemotherapy and dialysis basically 5 days a week, 2 days in chemo infusions and 3 days of hemodialysis going to a center to sit on the machines.
So you had to go every day. It wasn't like staying over.
No.
Okay. Were you close by?
Yes. Luckily we were within probably a mile and a half of the facilities. The dialysis was outside the hospital. But it was sort of a tug of war between doctors. The kidney people want to focus on the kidneys, and the cancer people want to focus on the cancer, and which should take precedence. But the cancer had to be treated if the kidneys had any hope of ever potentially recovering.
Now, was it the myeloma that caused the kidney failure?
Yes.
Okay.
Myeloma usually, in a lot of people, causes bone damage, and that's where where the back pain came from. Mm-hmm. For me, nothing broke. Other people experience a break somewhere in an arm or a leg. Mine was so advanced, and the overproduction of certain protein chains messed up the kidneys severely. Okay. There's a component in the blood, which you don't know unless you are in the medical field, where they have kappa and lambda light chains. Like everything else, there's ranges that you're supposed to be in. Kappa chains, I believe, marker you're supposed to have in the average person between 3 and 19 in your body. I had close to 20,000.
Oh my gosh.
So
more is not better.
More is not better.
Gotcha.
Really gunking up the works. So my life for the next several months was hemodialysis 3 days a week. And on the days I wasn't going for the dialysis, I'd go to the hospital for chemotherapy, plus all the medications and stuff that I took simultaneously. Diet changes, everything that had to go into balancing two diseases in their final stages was pretty tricky.
Gotcha. And now you had so I think basically the as close to a cure as you can get for blood cancers is a stem cell transplant, right? So yes. Was all the chemo and the dialysis to get you to a point where your body could accept the stem cell transplant, or was that something that was brought into the equation later on?
The first thing it had to do was have the numbers start to go down.
Okay.
So the original therapy I was giving, chemotherapy regimen, worked for one cycle. And I believe my cycles were 3 week, where they'd run certain numbers again. My initial regimen worked for the first 3 weeks. And when they gave it to me for the second period, my numbers started to spike. So they had to wait it out to make sure it wasn't a blip. So they had to change my regimen, different drugs, different combination. And that started to work, and the numbers consistently dropped and dropped and dropped.
Yay.
Simultaneously, hemodialysis is not fun. It actually was more taxing on my body than the chemotherapy was.
Wow. So
there is an alternate form of dialysis you can do, which I didn't know, that you can do at home called peritoneal. Instead of washing of the blood, which you get when you go to the centers and basically filter your blood for a few hours and take out the toxins, peritoneal dialysis is a different form where fluid flows into your peritoneal cavity, goes into the body, and then absorbs the toxins out. You have to go through surgery and get a catheter in your stomach, and it's one thing after another. So I decided to try it. It's not guaranteed it'll work. I had surgery in, I want to say, August or September of that year of 16. And it takes a while for it to heal. And then you have to be trained on how to do the dialysis, since you will be doing it yourself at home, how to use the machine, and or how to do it manually if the machine doesn't work. So that takes several weeks.
Gotcha.
So I rolled the dice, and starting, I want to say it was Halloween of that year, actually. I did the peritoneal dialysis at home for the first time. I do it overnight. You basically hook yourself up to the machine overnight, and you're hooked up for 9 hours while you sleep. Of course, there can be issues, but you can't have pets in the room. There's a whole bunch of things. Before everybody wore a mask, I learned how to wear a mask because you had to sanitize and do all this kind of stuff to hook up your body to this machine. And I will say, I didn't feel progress, even as my numbers went down with the myeloma. That from my diagnosis in May to early mid-October, I felt the same, like no change, the same pain, the same suffering, the same. And I wondered if I would ever get any better. And I was considering maybe stopping treatments if this was my new plateau. I wasn't getting past this point. Probably a week of doing the peritoneal dialysis at home, I actually started to feel physically much better. And I think that's because it got more toxins out. That method, because you were doing it every day. And that combined with the treatment, the cancer treatments working, I rebounded, at least psychologically, that I was like, all right, well, I feel a little bit better. Plus the Cubs won the World Series, so that, that helped me feel pretty good. They're one of my teams. So that year, because who knows, having two diseases simultaneously in their final stages, either one can get you.
Mm-hmm.
It's
and trying to fight both of them at the same time, and
both at the same time, and quite honestly, the odds were not very good.
Never tell me the odds.
Yeah, well, I don't know the numbers, but yeah, I'm certainly behind those curtains. They might have been placing bets on how long I'd last. I have no idea. But I got better, and I got better, and my numbers improved, and the stem cell transplant was the goal, to be able to get to a point where I could undergo it.
Okay.
So by late January, early February of 2017, I had hit basic remission, therapy-wise. That the numbers were sort of holding. So at that point, I was asked, do you want to do the stem cell transplant? We highly recommend it, but it's your choice. And I opted for it. So there was a big gear up period. I would go through all these tests to be cleared to do it. And I had side effects from several of the treatments as I went through in the previous months. I ended up having blood clots from one of the drugs. I ended up having some neurological problems. I had a rash from one of the drugs. So as they treat you for one thing, you can get complications and didn't have to be treated for something else. So it's a roller coaster ride for sure. But and I was going to do an autologous stem cell transplant, so it's my own stem cells. I don't know how they decide to use your own versus somebody else. Even if they told me, I don't remember, because it's very.
I would imagine if they possibly can, it's much better. There's less chance of a rejection if you're using your own tissue versus.
I think that might be the phase
else.
If they're trying it, depending on your age and other health issues. So I had to inject myself with a certain drug for several weeks to stimulate new stem cell growth. And then have my own stem cell harvested. We basically go sit on like an apheresis blood machine while they streamed out the blood and took the stem cells and ended up freezing them. And I think they got 3 to 4 times the amount they wanted. So so they have plenty for myself or for somebody else for future use if necessary.
Oh, wonderful.
So I geared up for the stem cell transplant. I got the thumbs up. I passed all the tests. And when they were ready to do it, I went in early April of 2017. And you don't know how long it's going to take. It varies from person to person. You're in a secured transplant wing that has limited number of beds. So you have to wait your turn till a spot opens up. And you can't leave the floor. It's very, I wouldn't say secluded, but secured.
Well, sure, it has to be so sterilized and,
Yes, you have to
transplants are a
go through
big deal.
special doors. People have to wear gowns, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So April 7th is considered my new rebirth day, as they call it. 2 days prior, they give a high dose of a chemo. I think it's called melphalan, that essentially kills your immune system. And as your body is going downhill, defense-wise, um, they defrost stem cells, and it's nothing major. You basically it looks like you're getting blood. It's hooked up to an IV, and they squeeze them back into you. But the next 10 days to 2 weeks can be pretty awful, as your body basically gets down to the level where you have no immune system, you have no red blood cells, white platelets, and the complications that come with that. Think of it as like the flu times 1,000.
Wow.
There's stomach, there's fevers, there's chills, it's different from person to person, but it's not pleasant.
So never take for granted your immune system.
Right.
Right.
And on top of that, while I was in the hospital, I had to do the dialysis there because I couldn't do it at home. But they wouldn't allow me to bring the machine in for legal reasons. So the nurses had to do it manually, which meant doing it 5 times a day.
Oh my gosh.
So you could be in the
You didn't
middle of
get
a
to
deep
sleep
sleep, and
through
they
that,
would
right?
wake you up to make sure it gets done because it was part of the progress. That's something you can skip. So I was in, I think, for 15 days for my stem cell transplant.
Okay.
And was released in, I guess that was late April. And then basically for the next 2 to 3 months, you're down for the count. It's a lot of going up for follow-up visits, but you have no immune system. You're wearing a mask. You lose your hair. It's all the standard cancer stereotypes that go with people who do chemo. They call it the 100 days journey. So it's a lot of tests and this and that and blood works and following up, and you're high risk for infections, that kind of thing. It wasn't easy. I had to go back to the hospital several times for little issues, and but by the time that late summer, sometime in late July or August, they did a follow-up PET scan and a bone marrow biopsy, which this time they knocked me out for.
Yay.
And that's how they were to determine I was in stringent remission.
That's fantastic. Now, do you know kind of what the odds are of like going into remission from multiple myeloma?
A lot of it is based on what stage you're diagnosed at, like anything else. Myeloma, unlike the other cancers, only has 3 stages.
Okay.
So if you look up some of the numbers, at least at the time I was diagnosed, and if you were diagnosed in stage 3, and the studies and the numbers that were out there publicly at the time would say you had less than 2 years to live.
Wow.
So,
So there wasn't even a prognosis of recovery.
Yes. Stage 3 was basically a death knell. Factor in age, prior health, all that kind of stuff. I think I probably overcame. It's probably standing on the edge of the cliff, let's say, for many months. Now, myeloma, like anything else, it's very treatable in the early stages. A lot of people live many, many, many years if it's caught and dealt with. The problem is it's so rare, very few hospitals treat it. So usually in a metro area, might be lucky if there is one. Here in Maryland, both hospitals that treat it for this state are in Baltimore, so I'm fortunate. But if you live somewhere rural or small townish, you're traveling to usually a major city, of Philadelphia, New York, um, for treatments. And I've met
Gotcha.
several individuals who would come from different states for myeloma treatment, because while you might have a local oncologist, they're not a specialist in myeloma. So it's
And unfortunately, you live in a rural area, even things, as easy as chemotherapy sometimes are not available, and you have to travel.
right.
I long for the days that you'll be able to get treatment for things, within a half an hour or an hour tops, and don't have to travel several hours, to get treatment for, because you don't want to be like, especially if you're in like awful shape, you don't want to be driving 2-3 hours just to go and get treatment. So hopefully someday hospitals will be better equipped for all types
I
of
agree.
cancer.
Yeah, having seen it firsthand, and everybody's different. As you know, in a cancer center, there's different people are in for various uh, tumors or whatever they're dealing with, of all ages. I've seen children. You see very elderly, and it's shocking the spectrum of humans that can get anything at any time.
Right.
And
Cancer is very non-discriminatory.
no, it's not. And sometimes it's lifestyle choices that lead you to possibly
Mhm.
you're more likely to get something. And then sometimes it just comes out of absolute nowhere, no family history, no nothing, and
Right.
and you're caught off guard, and you just got to deal.
And now, so your myeloma is in remission. How are your kidneys today?
My kidney function, I got off dialysis that same year in late June, I believe. Um, they plateaued, and I initially it was suspended to see how I could do without doing dialysis. So I had all the robot parts still there just in case. Um, and they suspended, I think, for 4 weeks just to see where my numbers went. And they were happy. So I ended up having the catheter and all that kind of stuff eventually removed. But I haven't done dialysis since June of 17. My kidney function is very low compared to the normal human being. The markers they always look at are the creatinine and the BON and the GFR. Um, you're on dialysis. If GFR gets below 10, that's dialysis area. My GFR was as low as 7, I think, at one point.
Okay.
And mine hovers now between 15 and 20. So it's low functioning, but I've been very stable for 7+ years. So, in addition to my hemo oncology, I follow up with the kidney doctors. I follow up with skin doctors since I've had 2 subsequent skin cancers. So, the more specialists, I guess, the better in a lot of ways. But
I mean, it's a lot more eyes on you,
yes,
and hopefully picking up things at a much earlier stage than end stage.
yes.
All right. So where are you in your life today? Like, how has cancer changed you? How has it changed your outlook on life, what you're doing with your life?
It's once you realize, in my situation at least, how close to the end I was. And you don't necessarily know that in the moment, but reflection on um, a lot of the things I was always a stick in the mud. This is what I do. This is how I do it. I don't do this, or this. Um, Very rigid kind of approach to life. I'm more flexible. Um, I think cancer and where I've been personally and what I've seen other people go through as well has made me a little softer. So things like that I would always tell myself, I'm never going to do this, I'm never going to do that. I've changed my tune on a lot of things, not everything. I always said I would never go on a cruise, since done it. Would never get a tattoo, since done it. And I what it really taught me, one is the importance of having someone who loves you as your caretaker, because I wouldn't been able to survive this without them. Absolutely, without my wife being there every step of the way, there's no way you could do this alone. In addition to that, people that were important to me that I kind of lost touch with just because life happens. Old friends, distant relatives, whatever. Seeing my own near end has made me rekindle relationships. And not that I did anything wrong or people did me wrong or whatever, but I just kind of forgot about it because
People drift apart over time.
Family and everything gets in the way. So a lot of my old friends from high school who I hadn't seen in 15, 20 years, I've made an effort to reestablish. I'm more open to traveling and doing things that previously would not have interested me outside of baseball. That's still my number one passion, but I'll do other things too. So I would say it's kind of like getting hit in the head with a brick, and realizing you're stubborn and some of the ways you looked at living might not have been the best approach. There's also a thing I didn't know this called survivor's guilt. That I lost loved ones, friends, and family to various forms of cancer, including my grandmother and my mother-in-law. But why was I spared when other people who were wonderful human beings didn't make it and succumb to their illness? So it's a real struggle sometimes to put into perspective that I survived and not everybody does. But I think one of my purposes is to enjoy life, to share my story, and also to embrace the good that I had to go through this to realize that I have.
Gosh, I love that. Survivor's guilt is something that comes up frequently in interviews and just talking to people that, no matter what you go through, a lot of times we still feel like it wasn't enough.
Right.
Or we don't get to say that we're survivors because somebody else had it worse. And I went through this myself with my own diagnosis and treatment. I felt like, it wasn't that big of a deal and I'm fine now. And other people have had it much worse. And it's something that so many of us have to go through. But I mean, no matter what you're going through in life, you can always find somebody who's worse off than you are.
Of course.
And sometimes I think that's like just putting it into perspective and God letting me know, hey, you could be this person. So, buck up and get on with what I've planned for you kind of thing. But it is something really ingrained in a lot of us. Like, hey, yeah, we didn't go through it hard enough. And I mean, the things that you went through, for you to still be able to have that survivor's guilt with everything that you went through just goes to show that it can come up in anybody. And it is something to take a look at, go and talk to somebody about, go get help about, because, we're all here for a purpose. And regardless of what we went through, we're all survivors and we should embrace that and be grateful for that.
Yes, absolutely.
Not be guilty that we're still alive.
No, and use your experiences to help others.
Absolutely. And I think that's part of why we have these experiences, so we can share them and help other people who are going through it as well.
Absolutely.
Love it. All right. So I always ask this of my guests. So if you had one piece of advice to give to someone who's just starting on this cancer journey, maybe they were just diagnosed, maybe they're trying to navigate this new reality, what would that piece of advice be?
Number one, your own body. So even if you haven't been diagnosed and you think something might be wrong, don't sit on symptoms. That's my first piece of advice, because if you let things go on too long, as I almost did, um, there is a point of no return in certain illnesses. Um, but number two is, most importantly, don't give up. Um, I was at the end of my rope, two diseases simultaneously. And quite honestly, I beat the odds. I probably shouldn't be here, but I try to be the embodiment of a stay the course. And even in your darkest hours, that's what friends and family and loved ones and spouses and prayers are for, is to get you through the tough times. Um, and even if you think I'm done, I can't do this, push yourself. You're a lot stronger than you think you are. And when your back's against the wall is usually when you dig deep and find the strength that you didn't know you had, to overcome. So, my example, I hope, shows people that, please, even if you have to hold somebody's hand, stay the course. And, you know, hopefully there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
I love that. Yeah, when I was listening to your story, I just kept thinking, man, I don't know if I would have been able to just keep going the way that you did, dealing with all of that, just the strength that all of that took. So my hat's off to you. I don't know. I mean, we never know how strong we are until we don't have any other choice.
Correct.
But yeah, it's so good. You can overcome and stay the course. I love it.
Firmly
All right,
believe it.
Peter. So if people want to reach out to you, if people want to talk to you, if they want more information about, your story, is there some place that they can find you, that they can, whether it's social media, email, something that they can reach out to
Social
you?
media, I'm on Facebook. I also have a Caring Bridge blog, that, if you've been on Caring Bridge, my wife started it when I was very sick. Instead of having to tell everybody over and over again what was going on, we kind of put it in one place. So my journal is in there. All you have to do is sign
And
up
we'll
for.
put that in the show notes. So if you
Yep.
can send
So
me
that
that
people can
information,
find
and
that,
I
and then
can.
you can contact. I haven't updated it in quite a while, but my story's in there, and you can just go back to the first post and go through there and kind of see it, boom, 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 especially during the stem cell transplant times,
Okay.
and what I endured and everything. So, but yeah, I'm when it comes to cancer survivors and caretakers, I'm definitely willing to speak to anyone at any time.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. And thank you for your time today. This was such a beautiful story, and I love happy endings. And, and my wishes for you for continued remission and best of health.
All right. Appreciate it, Melissa. Thank you very much.
All right. Have a great rest of your day.
All right. You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.